Hey everyone, it's me, Mike, back again from Analog Attack. Good to see you. Thanks for watching. Got a great video today. It's, going back to the Japanese punk again, but today specifically about women in Japanese punk over the years. Really, this should be a documentary, this is a kind of show and tell vinyl kind of a channel. So what we're going to get is a stack of records. There's actually more than I thought, and not even scratching the surface here with this stuff, but this is all stuff that I picked off the shelves from the collection. Either all women bands or bands with a key woman member of the band, vocalist or guitarist, bass player, whatever. I've got four kind of subsections. We're going hardcore, and then sort of more post-punk stuff, a new wave, a little sidebar off into Kyoto, and then we're going to finish off with a garage punk section at the end. It's going to be a great time, so sit back. Some of these are going to be familiar to you, some maybe not, but either way, let's sort of celebrate all the great women that have been involved in Japanese hardcore and punk over the years. All right, a little drink of Kirin beer, cheers. And let's get going. This is my first choice to sort of start off this episode with. I'm wearing the shirt. Classic from 1983, Dogma Records, City Rocker Records. Of course, I'm talking about the Comes, No Side. Top 10 Japanese hardcore punk record of all time. Anyway, but with Chitose's amazing vocal performance, elevates it to an even better record. Absolute hands down classic. Deserves to be in every record collection if you're into Japanese punk. And luckily, La Vida es Famus did a reissue, so that's out there, easier to get than an original. Then there was a 3-year gap. Comes came back in '86. Lineup change. Luckily, Chitose is still singing. We're now on Captain Records. Now, Captain Records, this is the second record, Power Never Die. So on Captain Records, like I said, I'm going to talk more about Captain Records as we go through this show. More commercial sound, more metallic. I think people have kind of been reassessing this one in recent times. I see it's going up in price over here in Japan. Obviously, it's not as good as the first LP, but definitely worth a listen. Power Never Die, that comes, Captain Records. Then, last year, right at the beginning of last year, actually, we got a big surprise, kind of came out of nowhere. I'm not usually a fan of, live hardcore records, but this one, man, it's one of the best, live hardcore records of all time, in my opinion. It really is incredible. 2, unreleased live recordings from the 80s. Ballroom of the Living Dead came out in Japan. It sold out super quick. It went really quick. There's an amazing booklet in here as well. Loads of photos and history and all the gigs that they played. It has been reissued on CD. But man, honestly, if you're sort of wary of live records, don't be wary of this one. It's actually absolutely ferocious, top notch recommendation that comes. Ballroom of the Living Dead. And, Chitose, it wasn't over for her. She carried on singing. It has 1 7-inch by a band called Virgin Rocks, which is a heavy metal record. And then the best thing for me that she did post Comes is a band called The Wretched, who have a couple of demos out and some CD, some comp tracks. Absolutely ferocious thrash metal of the mid-80s. And that stuff needs to be put out on vinyl. I would have thought FOAD would have done that by now. Hopefully, they'll get to it at some point. Chitose, wonder where she's now, what she's doing. What an amazing vocalist and performer. Going back a little bit in time, actually, for this one. Kind of. I mean, this band started a little bit earlier than the Comes, I think, but the records were released around the same time. Keiko, Kyoko, Michiru, Satoe, or, as we know them, The Nurse. There you go. Again, La Vida es Famus coming to the rescue. They put out the Flexi and the 7-inch on this record a few years back. Great early Japanese punk. hardcore. There's a lot of sort of famous Japanese men from the punk scene in this band, sorry. But today is not about them, so I'm not going to mention them at all today. People probably know who they are. But yeah, what a classic couple of a flexi and a 7-inch, just great stuff. And I know that Kyoko, or Reiko, or Neko, as she calls herself, is still active. She sings in a band called DOT with, here we go, Maru from Abradako and the Execute Lip Cream. And that band is still active. And this next record actually belongs in another section, but I'll put it in here because it ties in with The Nurse. The bass player of The Nurse, Satoe, had a solo career, and it was on Captain Records, and it's real like poppy new wave. There we go. So if you want to kind of find out what happened to members of The Nurse, I posted this on Facebook the other day. Like, nobody had any idea about this Nurse connection, but it's very poppy kind of new wave stuff. I kind of like it, but it's quite interesting that that the bass player of the band kind of went on to this like little solo career. There's this LP and another 12-inch too. Captain Records again. Okay, same time period, going down to Hiroshima, although this band did relocate to Tokyo later on. Gas. It can only be Gas. I don't have the fancy records to show. I don't have the flexi or the 7-inch, or even actually, I don't have the 12-inch either, but I just thought I'd show this one because this is one, if you come to Japan, it's kind of easy to get. Narumi is the vocalist. Gas Reincarnation, which is the 12-inch, the songs from the split 7-inch, and then one song that from an album that never came out, never got released. I wonder what happened to that. Again, Captain Records. Captain Records. I know this episode isn't about Captain Records, but yeah, they'll show up a lot in this episode. But yeah, most hardcore punks prefer the earlier stuff. That's fair. I like all of their stuff. Got a little sort of more metally and commercial, a little bit poppy. But I think all the Gas stuff is great. And Narumi went on to sing for this rock and roll band called Narumi and the Misters. They have a 7-inch and an LP out. I've kind of dabbled with that stuff. I'd probably like it more now than I did back then. I should revisit the Narumi and the Misters stuff. There's probably a lot more stuff from the 80s, right, that I could get to, but that's all I've got to show today. So let's move into the 90s. Well-loved band. I mentioned this band last week in the top 10 Japanese compilation albums, hardcore punk compilation albums. Can only be the Gaia. This one, literally this one. This is the record that Sound Pollution put out because they toured the States. You know what? This band is amazing. Ganna is the vocalist, amazing vocalist. Yumirin went on to playing Delta Pure and other bands, but man, this album is not really the best representation of the band. It's like half live, and then the studio side is great, and then the front cover isn't that great, but pick it up if you see it, if you haven't heard the guy yet. Ferocious, Japanese hardcore in the traditional style. I think the best stuff that they did, and this is I don't usually do this, but there's a CD called Kick Up Ass, which came out before, CD only. Look how I take care of my CDs. This is the only thing I have like this. I don't even have the cover. So, anyway, it's the guy Kick Up Ass. Came out on Sunshine Sherbet Records, who put out the Tetsuare record. I think this is a better representation of the guy. And, there's the compilation CD on Sound Pollution as well. And, oh yeah, this is the Women's Liberation comp that I showed last time. If you didn't sort of catch that episode, it's for all women bands from like late 80s, early 90s. Women's Liberation came out on CD only. This is a bootleg. Wormcast, The Gaia, Gush, Piss. All 4 bands are absolutely incredible, ferocious Japanese hardcore in the traditional style. This needs a proper reissue, like I said in the last video. All right, more contemporary. a little bit, going up to Sapporo City for some ripping, like old school hardcore. This band might be a little bit overlooked, underrated, underappreciated. I think they had a 7-inch out in Germany, actually. Pekko is the singer of the band. FOAD did the FOAD treatment and put their whole discography plus other stuff on this double LP. I'm talking about Shotgun, Sapporo City Hardcore. 1994 to 2003, stick to old-fashioned style. That's what they do. This is like old school, lip cream influenced hardcore with Pekko on the vocals, ferocious vocalist. This is great, man. I love it. I think, deserves to be heard for sure. And thanks to, FOAD. We don't always give praise to FOAD, but I'll give it where it's due. And I think this is one of my favorites, actually, of the kind of Japanese hardcore stuff they've done. Shotgun, Sapporo City Hardcore. The next 3 bands I'm going to kind of lump together, and I think it's fair to do so. They have similarities. They're all contemporary bands, all with women singers. So the first band I'm going to talk about is Keiketsu. Amazing artwork. This came out on Break the Records in Japan. So they've got Keiketsu. Okay, Keiketsu. No. This came out on Kilivilla Records in Japan, which is kind of a more of a sort of indie label. Good label. And then Ice Cream. Ice Cream, again, this is a FOAD production, the complete discography, The End, Ice Cream. Like I said, all these bands kind of play what they call Showa era hardcore, which kind of goes back to ADK sounding stuff, kind of thin, kind of DIY, raw hardcore. All 3 of these bands are great. And there's also like a 3-way split, or a compilation, if you want to call it a compilation, called Croon a Lullaby, which came out on CD in Japan on Break the Records. But again, FOAD came to the rescue, put this out. Keiketsu, Ice Cream, and No. So you can check out all 3 of those bands on this compilation album. So, tip of the hat to FOAD Records again. Amazing stuff. All 3 of these bands are great. Great female vocalists, great women singers, great stuff. Compilations. I'm going to finish this one up actually with an important compilation that Brian from Drop Dead put out. All women bands except Melt Banana, who are 2 women and 2 men. There you go. Japan Core Omnibus Volume 2 Hardcore Mess. There's a double meaning to mess. If you look behind me, I've got the Mess 8-inch up there. So Mess is like the female species of a dog or any kind of animal. You got Oss for men, Mess for women in the animal kingdom. And, mess in English means mess. So, double meaning there. The Gaia, Yume Fuda, No Real, Honeybee, Bone Crusher, Grento, Sink, Melt Banana. Different stripes of punk and hardcore. Important compilation, I want to say. Is this still in print? Brian, can we get this from you? Let us know if you're watching. Beautiful comment. Brian put in the work to put this together. So, tip of the hat to Brian for putting this out back in the day when, maybe not so many people were interested in Japanese punk and hardcore back then. You know what I mean? All right. Let's take a little trip to Kyoto. I've done this sort of for a reason. I don't know. There's a very important band that came from Kyoto. They were teenagers, like delinquent teenagers. A lot of I think some of their songs were banned or the lyrics were censored. They were on Alchemy Records from Osaka. Sekiri, or Dysentery in English. This band was amazing. Like, again, one of those bands that when I was like purely listening to sort of traditional hardcore and stuff, I wasn't that into them. They'd appear on compilation album stuff. There's one called The Taste of Wild West, which has SOB and stuff on it, and Sekiri are on that too. I was like, I can't be doing this. But now I appreciate what a great band they were. Very like ramshackle, hardcore, punk, played by teenage girls. All this stuff got reissued recently by P-Vine Records, which is a massive label in Japan that put out tons of good stuff. This is the first LP. There you go. So, Sekiri. David Hopkins, rest in peace, from Public Bath Records, put out a Sekiri 7-inch in the States too back in the day. You might be able to find that one too. Very important band in Kyoto, just teenagers. Very rebellious band. I'm going to talk about a very important woman from Kyoto, and that's why I've done this as a Kyoto standalone section. That woman is Ranco, and here she is on the cover of this compilation album called We Are Beat Crazy. Now, Beat Crazy was a label that Ranco helped run back in Kyoto, back in the 80s. It's weird because this is on Captain Records again. You know, this is her on the cover, like I said. But yeah, it's got Sekiri on it, plus two of the bands that she was in. She was the singer of a band called Sperma, which sort of, sometimes went a bit more on the heavy rock, heavy metal side of things. And then she was the bass player in the Continental Kids. Got to look at the Continental Kids records. They're such visually pleasing records. There we go. Quite interesting band. They kind of sometimes did traditional Japanese hardcore, sometimes did 77 punk, sometimes were more metal. But Ranco was the bassist. There you go. Nowhere Gypsies. Yeah, sadly, she passed away in like 1997, I think, at a young age. There's one more Ranco thing I want to talk about. Now, is anyone familiar with LOX? It's kind of that super group that Naoki from Lip Cream and Toshi from X Japan did. And it's kind of a secret that Toshi was on it because he was under contractual obligation with a major label. And, Ishia from Forward sang on a song, and Butaman from Tetsuare sang on one song. One of my favorite songs on that record, and most people might have only seen the CD. I didn't know this existed on vinyl too for a long time, so I'll quickly show it. It's LOX. Beautiful looking record. It's silver embossed vinyl. LOX, and the song that Ranco sings on is called Blaze Woman. Kind of a rock song, but her vocal performance is amazing. It kind of always gets me a little bit. There's a kind of slow breakdown at the end with a Naoki guitar solo and stuff, and Ranco's vocals. Love it. Check out their LOX record if you haven't heard it. I can't talk about Kyoto without mentioning this band because they're blowing up right now. I mean, I think it was just 18 months ago, 2 years ago, they were playing with Warhead in like an 80 capacity venue. And, they're kind of still playing in smaller places, but they're now playing with Oasis and the Foo Fighters. I didn't like this band at all at first, but I really come around to them. I think, it's not much different to Melt Banana, the music they're making. Of course, I'm talking about Autoboky Bieber. Super fun band. I think, maybe some of the Analog Attack demographic might not be too keen on this band, but I think, good luck to them. They've worked hard. They've come up through the sort of the live house circuit, and I think they deserve the success. They're an amazing band, but at the same time, it is kind of interesting that a band that really does sound pretty similar to Melt Banana is, supporting the Foo Fighters and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Oasis in massive stadiums. But good luck to them. It's good. All right. Next section is kind of the post-punk and the new wave and the beat punk. This is probably the oldest record that I'm going to show tonight. It's from 1979. It's on Vanity Records. It's a kind of avant-garde post-punk classic. It's the Aunt Sally record from 1979, featuring the amazing Few, who went on to a great solo career. There's still a bunch of her records that I haven't checked out. I think I've heard like the first LP, which is on Pass Records. But this is the place to start. This is an absolute masterpiece, a classic of avant-garde Japanese post-punk. And like I said, from 1979. Kya! Does anybody know what kya means? It's kind of a noise that you make when you see like a cockroach and you're scared and you kind of make an exclamation. Kya is the name of the band. Rebel Point from the 80s, kind of new wavy punk. I know Brian from Drop Dead is a big fan of this band, but I suppose isn't there like a 7-inch or a flexi that's more punk that people prefer? I like this record. I think it's great. It's a really fun record, like, poppy, new wavy post-punk. Rebel Point, Kya, great band. And in a similar vein, Zelda, again, similar. Maybe people prefer like the earlier. Is there a Zelda flexi or a 7-inch that people prefer, which is more punk? But this one, the Zelda debut LP on a major label, on Philips Records. These records, when you're in Japan, you might skip past them. They're still affordable. And, if you're thinking about delving into, stuff that isn't, Japanese hardcore, like more new wave and poppy, Zelda, Kya, you can't go wrong with these records. Great stuff. This is kind of in a similar vein, bit harder, bit more punk. Came out on Dogma Records, and again, this is a record that maybe people like the earliest singles a bit more. I love this record. It's Rap, R-A-P, and Hysteria. Like I said, came out on Dogma Records, which, more note, like the Comes record did, more, and, Gizm too, all that stuff, but more like harder hitting punk with kind of dark overtones. This next band is my favorite of this batch of records, and this band was introduced to me by Jello Biafra, of all people, completely out of the blue, because I used to do the MCR distribution, selling like Japanese punk records, and I guess he'd found out about that, and he sent me a bunch of tapes, and he was like, wow, I see you're sort of selling mostly punk and hardcore records. Here's a tape with some other Japanese stuff on it that you might not have heard. And this album was on that tape. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I love this band so much. It's Papaya Paranoia and War. Jello Biafra, he reviewed this in Maximum Rock and Roll, and he described them as like a roller coaster mix of the B-52s and No Means No. Fairly accurate, I would say. Such a fun band, amazing musicians. There's some amazing footage of them on YouTube. It's Captain Records like festival right in the middle of Shinjuku, Tokyo. I think Gastunk played that one too. Check that out. It's absolutely phenomenal. Again, Captain Records. Get this. The second LP is amazing too. Also on Captain Records. The third album is not so good. This will be my last choice of ones to pick up from the band. There's even more, actually, I think, that may be CD only. I think they kind of jumped to a major label by this point. Lunatic is the name of this one. But definitely those first two Papaya Paranoia records are absolutely mandatory in the collection, I would say. Love this band so much. Papaya Paranoia. Local band, Osaka. I think this band is overlooked and maybe unknown. They just did like a kind of reunion show, I think, here in Osaka. I'm talking about OXZ. This is a 12-inch that they did back in the early 80s. Post-punk. Great stuff. But, luckily, this thing came out. It's on Captured Tracks. That's an American label, right? It's basically their discography. There you go. OXZ. All along ago, 1981 to 1989. There's a booklet, which I mentioned him already. David Hopkins from Public Bath Records. He did the liner notes on this record. There we go. OXZ. Anybody know this band? Like, if you're into the Japanese post-punk, this is definitely one to check out. Osaka, local band, OXZ. Darker gothic stuff of the era, featuring the amazing Shoko on vocals. I think we had just had him on the show, CC from Lifeless Dark. I think he's a fan of this band. Last time we were in Japan, he'd either already heard of them or I recommended them to my, I can't remember. But anyway, I'm talking about G. Schmidt. There she is, Shoko, the vocalist. Dark and gloomy gothic post-punk. Great stuff. I love this band. This is on a label that I can't pronounce. It's in German. It's not on Captain Records, I can tell you that. But this is like a 4-track, 12-inch. This is also kind of like a mini LP. Sin, Secret, and Desire. G. Schmidt. It's on the same label. I'll check it out. I'll put it in the comments later. And then she had a bit of a solo career, which a bit more commercial. I still like this record. It's in fact, I talked about it on the podcast before. This is Shoko and Soil. Kind of dark, avant-garde, new wave pop music on EMI Records, major label. She got a major label deal. So there's a bunch of G. Schmidt stuff on YouTube as well. Okay, I think this section is going to end up with a bit of the lighter stuff. Beat punk is kind of a genre that Beat Crazy, right? Talks about the label Beat Crazy. Just very commercial, kind of poppy, 77 influence punk. I like this one. Beardsley. Great band. Jackie is on vocalist. They got a ripping guitar player actually in this band. Again, it's an upbeat, like poppy, commercial punk. I don't know. I don't know why I'm really getting into Captain Records recently in my old age. Double Frenzy, Beardsley, probably like 86, 87, something like that. One you can find in the cheap bins. Anybody remember the Road Warriors? Is it an 8-inch? The Road Warriors, like Kago from the Stalin and GZ is in that band. That's kind of one of those things that people are after. But they kind of morphed into this band, which is Nikki and the Warriors. So Nikki is now the singer. This is not a classic. Hey, guess what label this one's on? Yes, exactly. Captain Records. It's, poppy, commercial, rock and roll punk. They cover Cherry Bomb. They start off with Jumpin' Jack Flash. But you know what? I'm including this because they're such a well-loved band in Osaka. And I know that Habi from Gloom and the Lifehouse, the venue that he runs, he'll try and get Nikki and the Warriors to play it. All the crust punks go out. It's like Cobra in a way. Not Cobra, Laughing Nose. Laughing Nose, they kind of play more poppy stuff these days. But man, all the crust punks love Nikki and the Warriors. And, I should go and see Nikki and the Warriors because every now and again they will play. I'm not sure who's in the band, except I know that Nikki is the singer. There's a couple of other records. I didn't bring them out. I just bought this one. This is the first LP. Captain Records, Nikki and the Warriors. Everybody is familiar with King's World Records, and you probably all the kind of crazy noise punk and the swankies and stuff that they power. This is probably one of the most left field records that King's World put out. It's Shonen B or Boy B. There you go. Toteoki no Ichinichi. Yeah, this one was introduced to me by Kazuo at Punk and Destroy because he loves this kind of post-punk pop. It's a little bit avant-garde. It's still out there. It's still in print. I don't think this was a record that kind of took off. Could have done. It's got some sort of commercial appeal. But yeah, check it out. Boy B, Toteoki no Ichinichi on King's World Records. All right, the last section, we're going to get to the garage punk. And honestly, I wasn't into the Japanese garage punk like back in the day. But I've really come around to it in, about the last 4 or 5 years. And I was just sat here thinking, well, I'm going to talk about garage punk. I'm in Osaka and I don't have any Shonen Knife records to show. But, everyone kind of knows Shonen Knife. They're still active. They're on tour right now or just came off tour. And then I was thinking about the Ben 10 label, which was around in the 90s that put out loads of women like garage punk. I went to a show in 93 in Tokyo, and it was like So What and Urban Terror and some other hardcore band. And this band called the Flamenco A Go-Go played, who are kind of a 50s, sort of 60s style kind of garage punk band, and I just did not like it at all. But now I love that stuff, and there's so many, all women bands playing garage punk in Japan, probably more than any other genre. So let's quickly go through a stack of great garage punk records, and obviously the most well-known band in this category is the 5678. Again, I didn't used to like this band at all, but they're so much fun to listen to. I think, come on, it's like you got to be a real stick in the mud to sort of not appreciate such a fun band. I think the first LP is probably the best. It's a bit rawer, a bit sort of more aggressive, more of a garage punk attack. They kind of introduced more of the 50s and the 60s rock and roll as they went along. If the 5678s are a little bit too, 50s for you, and you like something a bit more aggressive, this band is fucking wild. It's the 54 Nude Honeys. A lot of these bands have really amazing vocalists, like not very aggressive vocalists with sort of growling, screaming vocals. 54 Nude Honeys is a really high energy garage punk band. This came out in the UK on Mademoiselle Records, so it should be easy to find. I think this band is still going as well. This is fun stuff. It's great garage punk. This is a band from Nagoya who kind of mix 77 punk and power pop with J-pop, and it's an interesting mix. Zero Fiction. I've got their 2 albums too, but this is the sort of singles collection, the very best of Zero Fiction. Super fun band to listen to if you can imagine power pop mixed with sort of J-pop melodies. And I've got another band that's going to be the last pick of this show at the end who does similar things, but the results are quite different. So we'll get to that in a bit. In fact, the guitar player of that band that I'm going to mention right at the end is the guitarist in this band called Tokyo Killer. The guitar player is Keme, and I'll reveal her other band at the end. Tokyo Killer, again, just really high energy garage punk. I love this stuff. It's just so much fun to listen to, Great stuff. Tokyo Killer. Again, this is one that I showed on the podcast a couple of months back. Similar vein, Six. Kind of simple band name. Again, very 60s influenced. There's one song on here called Two Devils or Three Devils, which is so good. And I posted that track, Two Devils. Yeah, it's the last song on the album. Two Devils. I posted that song about 3 times on Facebook. It's such an amazing song. Check out Six, Two Devils, and tell me you don't love it. This came out on Sound Flat Records, which is a German label that has done a few of these kind of things. The Japanese garage punk, and they put like collections together, so easy to get in Europe if you're interested in Six. This band has just been on tour in the UK and Europe, and they're amazing. They're called the Let's Goes. Look at that. Amazing. Again, it's Sound Flat Records. This band is like, they're Ramonesy. There's Ramones stuff in here. It's 77 punk, power pop, garage punk. I want to see them live. I've seen videos of them live, and they look like such a great band to go and see live. They've got some other records out too. The Let's Goes. Killer band. This band absolutely blew me away. Again, Sound Flat Records did this one. Again, it's like a collection of singles and stuff. The High Marts. This band is phenomenal. Phenomenal band. Amazing songwriters. It's like power pop, garage punk, but the songwriting is top tier. It really is. And they've got a new single out. I think they're supporting the chats in Tokyo, like pretty soon, like next month, I think. Man, the High Marts, what an amazing. They've got a full length album, which is CD only. They got a bunch of 7-inch singles. This is the easiest thing you can get if you're outside Japan. Do you recognize the artwork? It's a pastiche of the Gizmos single, right? The High Marts, top notch stuff. Boys Order, local band, with Chihiro on the vocals. Chihiro Isadora, to give her a full name, is the leader of this band. She's a very active woman in the Kyoto and Osaka punk scene. She organizes lots of shows. She's played in tons of bands. She just got a new band together. I saw she posted on Facebook. Boys Order, again, just great, super catchy pop punk, garage punk, 77 punk, great songwriting, irresistible, infectious band, Boys Order. My last pick, I really got into this band a couple of months ago. In fact, I was a little bit obsessed with them. They're from Tokyo, all 4 women, but there's a leader of the band, and I think she's a genius. Just the whole concept of the band. I've got a bunch of their records, but just for brevity, I'm only going to show one of them. This is their 5th LP. It came out on a picture disc on Record Store Day. Originally, it was just CD only. But Kinoko Hotel, they've been very active. They've got a ton of records. Their concept is really mixing like 60s garage punk, a little bit of psychedelia, not much, just a little bit, with J-pop, like mainstream Japanese pop music. And sometimes the garage punk is at the forefront. And on other records, the J-pop is more to the forefront. But man, they're such a fun band to listen to. And the guitarist I was talking about was the guitarist of this band, of Tokyo Killer. And she's an amazing guitar player. They've got so many amazing promotional videos that are like little movies, little vignettes. They're so well done, and like she's in charge of all of the storylines and the production and everything. Pretty dark themes in some of these videos. I think she's an amazing songwriter and performer. Maybe again doesn't quite fit in the Analog Attack like demographic, but I love this band. I want to go and see them live. In fact, they just played last month in Sapporo, and they didn't play in like a fancy place. They played in the Lifehouse, which is owned by Slang, well, the singer of Slang, a club Counteraction, which is a long-running like punk, hardcore, underground music, independent venue in, Sapporo. So that's where they played when they went to Sapporo. Super cool band. Just go on YouTube and type in Kinoko Hotel. And she doesn't call herself the leader of the band. She calls herself like the hotel manager, which I think it's pretty fun. There's some really like dark humor to like running through this band. There we have it. Like I said at the beginning, I mean, we've just sort of, we haven't even got going really. There's so much more to talk about, but I think that's enough today. A quick primer and all the amazing women that have been involved in the Japanese hardcore punk scene. Actually, there's 2 more women I wanted to mention that don't have any records out, but are super important people, both to me and to Japanese hardcore. The first one is Erica Beck, who, opened Record Boy in Tokyo back in the day. Man, I used to go and like hang out there in the old location, like back in the early 90s, and it was always so much fun to hang out there. Such an amazing woman. You can see her name credited on a bunch of old Japanese hardcore records. So tip of the hat to Erica Beck and Rie Mitani. Rie Mitani was one of the first people that I got in touch with in Japan and was pen paling and stuff and that kind of thing. And she worked a punk shop called Dead End, a commercial punk shop. There's an official lip cream t-shirt that was done by Dead End, which has like cockroaches on it. That one hasn't been reprinted by Relapse, but it has in Japan. I don't think the cockroach design would go down too well in the States. But anyway, she worked at Dead End, and then she worked at Selfish Records, and it was amazing because she would sort of give me all the insider information, what's going on at Selfish Records, and it was so interesting, and the stuff that she told me about, like, the daily workings of Selfish Records. And she would send me like Selfish, like Uto t-shirts. And then, she organized the first Extreme Noise Terror of Japan. Her with like Dead End together organized the first Extreme Noise Terror tour of Japan. And then she put out the Raw Noise demo on a 7-inch as well. So, I miss Rie. We used to be good hanging out with her in Tokyo and pen paling and all that kind of stuff. And I know Erica Beck is still around. I hope she's doing well. So there you go. A little tribute to Rie and Erica Beck, two very important women in the Japanese punk scene over the years. There we go. That's it. I'm going to wrap things up now. I've gone on for way too long. I hope you enjoyed this video. There's probably some old favorites, maybe something new to discover. So as always, thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Have a good week. See you soon.